Following the New South Wales Court of Appeal's ruling that the anti-protest laws introduced by New South Wales Premier Chris Minns are unconstitutional, alongside the introduction of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's new hate speech law, concerns amongst a Greens Member of Parliament and political experts have risen over the long-lasting impacts of the laws on rights to protesting and free speech.
The anti-protest laws, referred to as the PARD laws, was inserted into the Summary Offences Act 1988 and the Terrorism Police Powers Act 2002. The laws enabled the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner to issue a public assembly restriction declaration over a public area if they believed an upcoming protest would cause a reasonable person to fear harassment, intimidation, or violence, or would pose a risk to the safety of civilians.
After a PARD was imposed ahead of a protest against the visit of Israel's President Isaac Herzog to Australia, which saw 30,000 civilians attend in Sydney's Town Hall last February.
The New South Wales Court of Appeal ruled last April that the PARD laws impermissibly burdened the implied right to freedom of political communication, protected by Australia's Constitution. Greens MP for Balmain and holder of the Greens portfolio for democracy, Kobe Shetty, says that the anti-protest laws were a knee-jerk response and quick fix mechanism to combat anti-Semitism, following the attack that killed 15 people at a Jewish Hanukkah festival in Bondi last December, and says that the Minns government does not respect the pro-Palestine movement.
Minns was really keen to link the attack to the peaceful protest movement, calling out the genocide in Gaza, introduce those laws to prevent protests in the wake of the attack and try and link those two issues together. I think the Premier's made it really clear that he doesn't really have much respect for the Palestine protest movement.
The laws were introduced after Bondi, which the cause of the attack was accompanied by right-wing rhetoric, linking the attack to protests against what a United Nations Commission and other organisations have declared as genocide in Gaza.
Shetty suggests that the timing of the introduction of these laws supports the notion that pro-Palestinian protests would cop the brunt of police discretion.
A study by UNSW Law Journal argues that rushed legislation can lead to the bypassing of vital lawmaking processes, such as evidence-based research and democratic participation.
There's been no evidence, of course, that what actually happened in Bondi had anything to do with peaceful protesters.
Shetty suggested that Minns' rushed creation of these laws was a concession to Israel lobbyists and an attempt to preserve the government's reputation amid public dissent, effectively disregarding fundamental human rights such as protest and free speech.
I think he just doesn't like dissent, and so his approach to having dissenting voices and escalating protests when people are unhappy with the decisions of government is to crack down on and try and stop people from protesting. There's this kind of signal to push towards this law and order agenda, to tell people, we're trying to make you safer by locking more people
Whilst
up.
the laws have been overturned and PARD charges have been dropped, Shetty fears that the laws may have led to long-lasting consequences due to alleged police force at the Herzog rally.
For a lot of people who attended that protest in February with elderly relatives or with people who might have been more vulnerable, and they were exposed to violence, some of them were injured, and it's really scared people. And so, that I think that was largely the point of the police violence. They wanted to scare people.
Shetty's fears that the laws may have instilled a public reluctance to protest comes after protesters alleged police used unreasonable and unnecessary force, which may constitute an offence under the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act 2002. One example includes a 69-year-old woman who alleged she had 4 vertebrae broken after a police officer allegedly pushed her onto the pavement violently.
56-year-old Derek Jones also alleges police brutality. Video footage appears to show Jones in a white shirt attempting to abstain from physical contact with police, before being repeatedly punched by multiple police officers. He now plans to launch legal action against the officers in the Supreme Court of New South Wales.
Police brutality serves as a reminder of the power police can exert with minimal consequence. Shetty says that the Minns government has doubled down, taken no accountability, and excused the media clips as lacking context. Whilst individuals can lodge a complaint regarding police violence to the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission, According to 2019 data, underfunding means that only 2% of cases are fully investigated.
Following police actions at the Herzog rally arising from the now unlawful PARD laws, 29 protesters were charged with assaulting a police officer and using offensive language, charges that fell outside the scope of the PARD framework itself. Shetty urged that common sense be applied as these remaining charges are subjected to prosecutorial discretion.
I think we've seen many, many times that offences like the offensive language charges are something that are used against people who are often actually subject to police violence themselves. I know there was an example of someone who bit a police officer. I would appreciate why that needs to be investigated, although he copped an enormous amount of police brutality in the process.
In Australia, a reasonable excuse defence is available when offensive language is used in direct response to police brutality. However, these specific charges have yet to be examined by a court.
As Min says that he will study the New South Wales Court of Appeal's decision, concerns regarding the implications of Rush legislation have also been linked to Albanese's new hate speech law.
The Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate and Extremism Act 2026, with political experts and advocacy groups questioning what constitutes hate speech.
Inconsistent definitions of hate speech are evident in Queensland, where the phrase "Palestine will be free from the river to the sea" has been deemed as hate speech, with users facing up to 2 years imprisonment.
The Queensland Board said that the phrase calls for the annihilation of the State of Israel and its Jewish population, and has been used by terrorists. Conversely, as the phrase references the geographic land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, a Palestinian historian, Mahar Nazar, argues that the phrase used by advocacy groups calls for the right for Palestinians to access their homeland, unity, and freedom from Israeli occupation.
A fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, Eddie Djokovic, argues that banning this phrase falsely equates anti-Semitism to criticism of the Israeli Defense Force, and argues that this law operates as a justification for the government's unwillingness to undertake adequate research, divest from, and sanction Israel. Shetty also believes that restrictions on protesting are deeply concerning and may prevent necessary change.
We've got so many examples over the recent history and the last couple of 100 years that protest has been absolutely critical for us to win so many of the things that we value today, like the shorter working week, women being able to vote. All of those things wouldn't have been won if it wasn't for protest movements.
Thank you for watching. If you have any experiences regarding alleged police brutality, you can contact the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission at lecc.newsouthwales.gov.au.